past few years, Westside Gunn has become one of the most exciting artists in hip-hop. As the leader of Griselda Records, he has his hands on some of the best albums of the year every single year since he's been out. And while his solo work can be divisive for many hip-hop fans, there's no denying that he has constructed one of the most interesting and era-defining discographies in modern hip-hop. So today, I've set out to do the impossible and rank all 28 Westside Gunn albums. But before I get started, if you love hip-hop and want to see more videos about the best rappers in the world, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel. And without further ado, let's get right into it. At number 28, Hitler Wears Hermes 1. There are no bad Westside Gunn albums in my opinion, but there are a few that I don't return to very often. With this being one of the shortest projects in his discography, it doesn't really have that much for you to sink your teeth into. This was the first project in the now infamous Hitler Wears Hermes mixtape series, and it came out at a time when he was just starting to master his own style and sound. And with few features and no ad-libs until the last track, it feels like the least Westside Gunn album. With that being said, the opening track, MK Queen's Dead, really bangs, and Me and My Eagle has a nice beat, but overall, there are better versions of this later in his career. And the last track, Lost Art, is straight up just annoying, with him crooning and dooting over some NBA warm-up style walkout music. If this was longer, it might have been a little higher, but as it stands, it's just alright. Number 27, Hitler Wears Hermes 5. This is probably the most generic of all his projects. When people criticize Griselda, this is the type of project that they're talking about. The cover with the blacked out eyes, the same old dusty piano loops, and the same bars that you'd come to expect from Gunn at this point. Mickey Sunday is the best track on here, and really levels up this whole thing, with Gunn spitting over these grandiose gospel samples. Rip Bobby is another standout here. Conway the Machine always brings his A game with the bars, and there's a dope beat switch to keep the listener guessing. There's a few more solid tracks on here, but most of it is pretty forgetful for me. Overall, I'd say this is a very solid project, but it gets lost in the shuffle in a discography this stacked. Number 26, Don't Get Scared Now. The first of a few Griselda team releases on here. This project is most known for being one of Griselda's few collaborations with mach-hommy before he left the label. This EP is really awesome, but with only 4 Westside Gunn songs on here, it's hard to compare to his other full-length projects. The opener, China, has Gunn, Conway, and Mach going bar for bar for bar, and is awesome to hear. Mach and Conway are the main event on this whole album, but Gunn holds his own surprisingly well. His verses on Stovetops and Visionware are really sharp, and all the songs are good, but none of them really stand out in the great discography of all these artists. This is a dope tape, but if mach-hommy and Prodigy weren't on this at all, it would have been completely forgotten. At number 25, Fly God is an Awesome God too. I have a lot of nostalgia for this project, as it came out right as we were still in the glow of Pray for Paris. But looking back, it's a bit of a mixed bag for me. Michael Irvin is an iconic opener, with a Hall of Fame Conductor Williams beat. I feel like this is the last project that Gunn treated like a true solo project. And after this, his records rely heavily on features, and Gunn shifts more to the role of a curator. As a rapper, Gunn isn't the most original here. It's a lot of him repeating the same bars and ad-libs over and over, and it can get grating. The real MVP of this project is Stove God Cooks. This was his entry to the Griselda world, and he absolutely murders every track he's featured on. And Gunn brings his A game on the songs that Stove God is on. But every track without Stove that isn't Michael Irvin is way too forgettable. There's also 2 skits and 2 interludes that just feel like filler to me. This album felt like Gunn in a transitional phase, now that he was gaining connections and popularity, and he didn't quite figure out what his next era would be. At number 24, Hitler Wears Hermes 6. Compared to number 25, I don't think this one has quite as high highs, but overall the quality takes a big jump up from top to bottom, and is a lot more consistent. Westside Gunn really feels like he cares about his rapping on this one, spitting these long, hungry verses that aren't reliant on ad-libs, but they do add to the experience. Benny the Butcher is the most valuable feature on this one. He's the first rapper we hear, and really sets the tone for this project. He ends up being featured on 3 songs, and really tears it up every time. The production offers a good amount of variety, while still all feeling like it fits together. Big Luther brings it all together, with Gunn and Benny ripping it up, and this great break in the middle that samples Luther Vandross in between verses. The second half of this album gets even better, and climaxes with the immaculate loop on Amherst Station. but that song appears on another album later in this list that I think it fits a little better on. Number 23, Peace Fly God. On paper, I should have absolutely loved this project. Stove God Cooks, SD Knack, and Westside Gunn over soul samples with cover art painted by Starker and Al Divino. And I do like the project a lot, but something about it has always felt a little bit hollow to me. This might be Westside Gunn's mixtape with the least Westside Gunn on it, and it doesn't really feel like his full heart was in this one. But everything that is lacking with his performance is made up by Stove God Cooks and SD Knack, who bring their own special brand of flavor on every track here. The production has this almost dreamlike quality, with these heavenly vocal loops that seem like they ring out infinitely. I love all these beats individually, but when you put them all together, there just isn't enough variety for me. Jesus Crack would be a standout on here, but at 8 minutes long, it overstays its welcome a bit. Big Ass Bracelet and Derek Bowman are two of my favorite songs of last year, with beautiful production and some of the best rapping around. This is a project that I throw on from time to time, and I always enjoy it, but in a Westside Gunn ranking, I just can't bring myself to put it any higher. Number 22, Who Made the Sunshine? This is the most egregious perpetrator of the Griselda using the same piano loops over and over allegations. You really wouldn't be able to pick most of these beats out of a lineup of other Griselda beats, so it's hard to put this one any higher. The main reason why it's this high to begin with is because of its features. Westside Gunn somehow brought out Slick Rick and Busta Frickin' Rhymes on this project, and that alone gets this album the number 22 spot. The features that these guys drop are amazing. It makes me wish we could have gotten more new music from these two over the past few years, especially Rick. It's so rare to hear him rap these days. And Ocean Prime and Good Night were Song of the Year contenders in 2020 just because of him. There's also features from Black Thought, Boldy James, Jadakiss, and Griselda staples like Stove God Cooks, Conway, and SD Knack. So there's a ton of great rapping on here. But with all that said, I think this is one of Westside Gunn's weakest performances as a rapper. I think earlier in his career, he sounded hungrier, and I think at times over the years he's gotten more skilled as an MC, but on this project he's at his most grating. As a huge Westside Gunn fan, it's rare for me to wish that the features were rapping instead of him, but that happens a few times on this project. But this does end with a bang though. The closing track 98 Sabres was produced by Just Blaze, and is one of my favorite Griselda posse cuts ever. Number 21, Hitler on Steroids. This DJ Green Lantern hosted mixtape is a combination of new material produced by Green Lantern and a lot of songs that were already released previously on other projects, so it's hard to rank this amongst other albums that are completely new. But with that being said, this is a very solid project. The DJ Green Lantern beats are hard-hitting and fit Westside Gunn perfectly, and I think the songs that they chose from other projects are really dope. The only reason why this is so low on the list is because it's not essential to the Westside Gunn canon. If you're not specifically going on a Westside Gunn deep dive, there's really no reason to put this one on. This was released in 2017, so I like to think of it as the cap on that era of his career, gathering up a lot of his best songs from the time and putting them together. I'm usually not too big a fan of compilation tapes because you can get the material somewhere else, but I think DJ Green Lantern does a great job of putting these together in a way that feels cohesive and like it's a part of something new. And top to bottom, I think this has some of the best rapping that Westside Gunn has in his career. Number 20, What Would Sheen Gun Do? As the only full-length Griselda group album, this project has always felt like it didn't quite live up to the hype that the crew had built up over the years. But this is far from a bad project. Westside Gunn, Conway the Machine, and Benny the Butcher are all at different points of their careers here, and this thing is overflowing with hard-hitting rhymes and copious amounts of chemistry. Whenever Gunn raps with his brother and cousin, he always steps up his lyrical precision to make sure that he doesn't get shown up, and this is no exception. There's a cool intro from Raekwon, and verses from 50 Cent and Eminem, and that's all dope. But the sound of this tape just never jumps out to me next to some of the solo work from these MCs. Dr. Bird's is the best song here, and really highlights what each MC does well, with Gunn setting the tone with some memorable bars, ad-libs, and the hook, Conway ripping the tightest rhyme scheme possible, and Benny coming through with the quotables. Really, this is a very good project, but like I keep on saying, in a discography this great, you have to really wow me to get higher on the list. At number 19, And Then You Pray For Me. The most recent Westside Gunn album has been very divisive. The album starts off amazing, with Westside Gunn going bar for bar with JID and Conway on the incredible song Mama's Primetime. I think that at times, Gunn is actually in his prime lyrically now in 2023. The album starts getting away from Gunn a little bit when the production switches to more of a trap sound. I'm not mad that he tries it. I would much rather him try a new sound and fail than just give us the same album over and over again. It just doesn't sound like Gunn really knows how to flow over these types of beats. The very next song, Costas, has this banging beat, and Benny and Conway kill it, but Gunn is just so offbeat here that it sounds like he's rocking a little B flow or something. There are some moments on here where he does sound better on the trap production, but it never quite hits just right. At 21 tracks, this is one of the longest projects of his career, so there still is a lot to love on here. Like I said before, when Gunn is on a beat that he feels comfortable on, he is truly rapping great at this point of his career. Fly God 2X is a good old school Westside Gunn song, with just him alone spitting from start to finish, and he murders it. And Kitchen Lights is one of the best songs of the year, with Gunn's best verse in years, and Stove God Cooks doing his thing that only he can do. All of the features in here are really great. Griselda's Usual Suspects are all present, and it even features Denzel Curry, JID, Jeezy, Rick Ross, and Ty Dolla $ign. Even though not every song works, this really does have a grand feeling to it. It's so much more ambitious than most of the other Griselda projects, and I really respect it for that. And it is getting better with every listen, so I can see it getting even higher in the rankings going forward. Number 18, Fly God is good all the time. This collaborative EP with Mr. Green is short, but so damn sweet. At only 5 songs, not counting the instrumentals, this project is all killer, no filler, and has such a unique sound to it. I really love when Gunn teams up with one producer for an entire project, because it locks in his creativity and makes him make the most out of one set of ideas. Mr. Green's production is different enough that it sounds nothing like any other Westside Gunn project, while also feeling right at home in Griselda's catalog. With no features, this is the rare project where Gunn has to carry the entire thing with him rapping by himself, and he rides these beats pretty effortlessly. Lyrically, there isn't much new ground being covered on here, but his presence and delivery on every track is top notch. Really, this one just isn't higher because at 14 minutes long, it leaves me wanting so much more from this duo. Number 17, Riots on Fashion Avenue. Another EP, this time with Mill Beats providing the production. This is a lot like the last one I just talked about, but it's a minute shorter not counting the bonus tracks. But even though there's only 4 songs on here, it still takes its time marinating in a darker vibe. Mill Beats does a great job of setting the tone on this one. The beats are dark but with some bounce to them, and it really sets this project apart from the lot. Brains Flew By is one of the most underrated Westside Gunn songs in his whole discography. He's able to find the pocket on these beats like a top tier MC. It makes me wish that he rapped more often on drum heavy production. The 2 remixes at the end are great too. If this was longer, it definitely would have been higher, but as it stands, this is just a perfect little EP in my book. At number 16, we have Griselda Ghost. In 2015, Westside Gunn and Conway teamed up with Big Ghost for the biggest Griselda mixtape to that point. This is very similar to what Machine Gun do, except the beats on here are just a little bit harder. This shit sounds classic from the first time that you hear it. Like I said earlier, when Gunn shares the spotlight with his brother Conway, he always brings his A game as an MC. And this is no different. On Brains on the Basquiat, the 2 MCs go back and forth, trading short verses in an onslaught of awesomeness. These 2 are blood, so it's no surprise that they have incredible chemistry, and this is one of the best showcases of that. This was very early in the Griselda run, so it has its own style to it, and isn't just using the same old Griselda formula. Big Ghost really knocks it out the park with the production, with the best batch of beats that I've ever heard from him. There's enough variety with the beats on here, but they all feel part of one cohesive package. The only reason why it's not higher is that since it's so simple with just these 2 MCs trading verses over nice beats, I do miss some of that trademark Westside Gunn curation that he has later in his career. Number 15, Flyest in Charge Volume 1. This is such an interesting tape to talk about, because it's so different from the rest of them. This album was made back in 2005, way before Griselda had any kind of signature sound, so it's cool hearing Westside Gunn with a completely different style and attitude while he's rapping. This project has mid-2000s production, but still is similar enough to fit that Griselda vibe, but it does have completely different bones than the beats that they usually rap on in the future. He's rapping over drum-heavy soul samples, and these are head-knocking and feel-good bops. If you're one of those people who can't really get into Westside Gunn because you find his voice and delivery annoying, then this is definitely a project that you should check out. He's not relying on any of the crutches that he uses later in his career, and his voice is even deeper and a little more conventional sounding. There's 26 songs on this thing, so it is a little bloated, but I really dig what they do with every single track. The intro, Lord of War, is one of my favorite songs on here, with him rapping over this feel-good soul sample, in a way that feels like he almost should have been running with Dipset or something. Track 3, Skit, is really great too. It's awesome hearing Gunn rap pre-Cerebral Palsy Conway the Machine. Conway even has a solo track on here, over Eminem's Stand beat, so this project is worth checking out just for that alone. A few tracks do feel a little dated with the mid-2000s sound, most notably How It Feel and Death Keep Calling Me, which really don't work at all for me. He raps over Alicia Keys' You Don't Know My Name, which shows a side to his style that we wouldn't see again for a while. All that was missing was some of his famous Come Here Bitch ad-libs. I think if this was trimmed down to about 14 or 15 songs, then it easily could have been top 10, but as it stands, it's just a really cool time capsule. Number 14, there's God and there's Fly God. Praise both. Westside Gunn linked up with Griselda's main producer Derringer for this whole project, so Gunn feels the most comfortable on this production than the rest of his EPs. This tape came out right as Gunn was entering his prime, and this has the perfect mix of raps, ad-libs, and features, making for a pretty great 19-minute listen. Derringer's production on this tape is so cool, and Gunn only has one thing on his mind, and that's spitting great verses. Loco is my favorite song on here. Gunn and Conway kill their verses, along with a verse in Spanish from Incredible Ness. And the beat is so smooth, and it makes for one of the cooler songs in his discography. Derringer's production feels like the soundtrack to a 70s crime flick, and he intercuts clips from movies at the end of each track, and makes this feel like an awesome short film. Every track on here is great, and I feel like this tape never gets mentioned because it isn't on Spotify, so definitely go check this one out if you haven't already. Number 13, Hitler Wears Hermes 4. Pretty much every project from here on out is essential Westside Gunn, and some of the best hip-hop made in the last decade. This tape starts off with The Cow, which is widely thought of as one of the best Griselda songs ever, with Kanye spitting a verse of the century contender. This song is how you start off your project, with a statement that lets the listener know that they're in for some greatness. Everyone always raves about how great Conway is on The Cow, but it shouldn't be understated how great Gunn is when he comes in with this really cool staccato, stopping and starting flow at the end. By this point in the Hitler Wears Hermes series, Gunn is so consistent with how he puts these projects together. It almost feels effortless for him, with how locked in he is with this sound. Gunn will toss an X-rated love song into most of his projects, and Aunt Rosie's might be my favorite, with this big theatric guitar sample, and Gunn rapping funny bars comparing pussy to Da Vinci paintings and watermelon Jolly Ranchers. Ringside Rocking Furs is another standout, with this beautiful intro by Tiana Denise, and it goes right into a typical Griselda banger. There's a few great moments on here, but for a lot of it, I'd consider it a pretty safe addition to his discography, without too many things separating it from other classics. Number 12, Hall & Nash. I feel like there's a different universe out there where Westside Gunn and Conway the Machine always rap as a duo, and they're thought of as one of the best rap duos in history. This project has both of them at their hungriest, right as they were breaking into the game and people were starting to pay attention to what they were cooking. Track 2, Dinner Plate, is one of those classic duo joints, where the two MCs trade bars with each other for the whole track. Hearing these two go back and forth is such a treat, and I wish they'd do it more these days. Their voices and rhyme styles are so different, but they have that familial chemistry that has them still feel like they share one voice on every record. This was before Westside Gunn embraced his role as the master curator, so he is fully focused on rapping on this project, and he's giving it all he's got, keeping up with Conway for the whole tape. The production on here is really great too, varied enough to give the tape a real forward-moving momentum, but keeping it all in the same pocket for these guys to rap over. This is another one that is tragically absent from the main streaming services, so if you haven't heard this one yet, it's definitely worth it to go over to Bandcamp and check it out. Number 11. Roses Are Red, So Is Blood. This is one of the true hidden gems of his discography. Westside Gunn teamed up with producer The Purist to create one of the purest pieces of art in his catalog. Like I've been saying with all of these EPs with one producer, these joints are all so unique and have such a clear artistic vision, and that's harder to achieve in the longer projects. Westside Gunn always attracts the top rappers in the game for his feature lists, and this EP brings out the real heavy hitters. Conway comes through on a Hall & Nash reunion, Rock Marciano blesses the eerily smooth Perfect Plex, and mach-hommy lends his French-Haitian Creole blend to the phenomenal track Donna Karen. This tape would be worth a listen for just those three alone, but Gunn kills it, and the production from the purist is amazing. The beats are so smooth, and I guess pure would be the best way to describe it. The only thing holding this one back from the top 10 is I just wish it was a little longer. Bringing us into the top 10, Hitler Wears Hermes 8, Side B. By the time we got to Hitler Wears Hermes 8, this series had pretty much become the hip-hop all-star game. Anyone who's anyone appears on this project, and I'm not complaining. The curation skills of Westside Gunn are on full display here, and it's not as easy as just putting a couple of dope rappers on a track and letting the magic happen. He's able to assemble different teams of artists on each track, and they're able to play off each other so well, sometimes playing off our preconceived notions of each MC, and then sometimes showcasing some new and upcoming talent. There's 2 intros on this album because that's just how much build up this project needs. And then it jumps right into some classics with the Conway and Benny assisted Hell on Earth Part 2. And then the phenomenal Jay Electronica track Free Cutter. Hearing Jay Electronica and Westside Gunn rap together wasn't something that I thought I needed, but now that I've heard it, I need about 5 more albums of this. Stove God Cooks and Rome Streets kill their verses as expected, with Big Al having my all-time favorite Rome Streets verse. Mach-hommy is on here a couple times, and even 2 Chainz and Tyler the Creator make appearances. The song with Tyler is only a minute and 45 seconds, so I really wish they let that one breathe a little longer though. And even though there are so many features, this isn't just one of those recent projects where Westside Gunn takes a back seat. He has a lot of dope verses on here too, and TV Boy is one of his best solo tracks in years for me. At over an hour long, I think this might be just a couple of tracks too long, but for the most part, I love this thing. Number 9, Fly God is an Awesome God. At 12 songs and just over 30 minutes long, this project lives in that sweet spot of Westside Gunn albums. There's enough features to keep each song exciting, but still has Gunn as the main event in each track. The production is a typical Griselda batch, but there's something about this batch of beats that connects with me more than usual, and makes these so memorable to me. Batista feels like it would fit in on most Griselda albums, but Gunn takes the beat and really makes it his own, using this relentless flow and changing the emphasis and delivery once he gets to certain parts of the song, and it makes for one of his best individual rap performances in my opinion. Thousand Shot Mac features Gunn, Conway, Hologram, and Mayhem Loren rapping over this awesome vocal loop that reminds me of some of my favorite songs on Peace Fly God. Luncheon and Birkin are both classics to me. They are slower and showcase this melancholic crooning side to Gunn that I think can be very effective when used sparingly. Pete's Sake isn't a track that gets a ton of love, but I really dig it. Conway, Benny, and Gunn reunite over this off-kilter, almost boom-bap beat with a sick vocal loop ringing through it. Definitely one of the more experimental moments on here production-wise. Dance Floor Love expands Gunn's catalog of love songs, and this is one of the better entries to the batch, and Gunlib links him up with Madlib for another awesome track. I'm still waiting to hear the full-length Gunlib project, so I'm a little bitter about that song. But the closing track, Lakers vs. Rockets, ends off the project strong, with Gunn and Sauce Walka rapping on one of the harder beats on the project. Number 8, Hitler Wears Hermes 7. This starts off a long run of Hitler Wears Hermes projects in this ranking. I view this one similar to Fly God as an Awesome God. This was released just a few months later, and has Gunn in the same artistic mind state. At this point in 2019, I think Westside Gunn had a strong case for having the best ear for beats in the world. Every track on here has a beat that walks that fine line between absolutely beautiful and the hardest shit you've ever heard. Even Broadway Joe and Size 42, which have that played out Griselda rolling piano sample, still bring a slightly different energy than the similar tracks that we've heard from them before. I think this project is slightly less consistent than a few of the albums that I just talked about, but the highs are so high that this was an easy one to place. The run of songs from Gondek to Lucia Bros might be my favorite 7-track run of his discography. It has a little bit of everything that Gunn does great, from the cold and aggressive Gondek, to the cool and catchy Kelly's Corner with Fat Joe, to the beautiful soul samples on Whoopi and Love You, to the incredible 3-man weave that the Griselda comrades use on the last 3 tracks of the run. Cool G has one of the sharpest Westside Gunn flows that I've heard, keeping right up there with Benny and Conway on that song. I wouldn't say there's filler because none of these songs are bad, but there's definitely a couple that I skip from time to time, so that holds it out of the top 7. At number 7, Hitler Wears Hermes 2. taking it way back to the second edition of the series, this thing is a major improvement from the first. At just 9 songs, this one is short, sweet, and sensational. The opening Big L at half a mil is awesome. Gunn starts off the song channeling the ghost of MC's past, in the first line mentioning CL Smooth, and the track ends by sampling Big L, proving that Gunn belongs in the same class as these 90s rap legends. The Hall and Nash track on here fits right in with their great collaborations of the time. Eggs has this hauntingly classic beat, and is a minute and a half of Gunn annihilating the mic, leading into some incredible throwback scratching. I feel like this is probably the album that started the notion that Griselda was throwing it back to the sound of the 90s, but I think that the thing that makes this album so special is that it doesn't really sound like it came from the 90s. It sounds like something completely new, and taking elements of that classic hip-hop sound that we love and bringing it into the modern age. City SOS and Me is another classic Gunn joint. This is the type of Westside Gunn solo song that I feel like he misses later on in his career, when he muddles everything up with his features. I do love all of those features, but there's just something about when Gunn is locked in and drops a great verse with no interruptions. He continues honoring hip-hop history on the track Era Boys, saying that he prays to Jay Dilla on the very first line. And this tape even has a song called Eric B, honoring one of hip-hop's first great producers. I think the second half of this mixtape dips in quality just a little bit, but it's still not bad at all. It just doesn't hold that high bar for the entire time. But ending the tape with the track Salute is really a great touch, and closes out this awesome entry into Westside Gunn's catalog. At number 6, we have 10. This might be a bit of recency bias, but I don't care. This shit bangs. This feels like the best case scenario for what he was going for with And Then You Pray For Me, because he really blends the underground Griselda style with a more mainstream and accessible approach. This album has features from artists that you never would have thought could have linked up with Westside Gunn just 4 or 5 years ago, but they all meet at the artistic middle, and it makes for an awesome album that sounds nothing like the other projects in his catalog. The second track, Fly God Jr., features DJ Drama. It has Gunn rapping over some trap production, and he feels way more comfortable and confident than he did on his most recent project. His curation is at the top of its game here, linking up artists that you never would think to put together. He put A$AP Rocky with Stove God Cooks, and together their styles somehow perfectly combined to make the song Shootouts in Soho, which ended up being one of my favorite songs from last year. There's production from RZA, Pete Rock, The Alchemist, Swizz Beatz, and more. But the real MVP production-wise is Conductor Williams, who absolutely murders the production on here, and provides an excellent backdrop for all of these Hall of Fame MCs to work their magic on. Gunn gets Run the Jewels on here, Busta Rhymes, Raekwon, Ghostface Killah, and even Mos Def and Talib Kweli make an appearance as Black Star. The only real asterisk on this project is what was my favorite song, Science Class, which featured Busta Rhymes, Ghostface Killah, Raekwon, and Stove God Cooks, all rapping over this incredible vocal sample. Unfortunately, after the project was out for a little while, they changed the beat, I assume for sample clearance issues, and it just made it a completely different song. I still enjoy this newer version, but with that original version, I think this would have been a top 5 project for me. At number 5, Hitler Wears Hermes 3. We are getting into the upper crust of one of the best discographies in hip-hop. This one specifically might have the best Westside Gunn rapping from start to finish in his career. There's some great features and cool skits, but the main event is Gunn himself, which is how it should be. Dead Winter Bloody Feegs is an incredible track, where Gunn raps for almost 5 minutes straight, with just a 30-second break in the middle, enough for a Kanye sample and a beat switch. Both of these beats are great, and to have Westside Gunn rapping for over 4 minutes on a song like this is like seeing Bigfoot nowadays, because he rarely raps for more than 16. The production on this tape is what brings it all together. The God Fahim, OG Soul, Camouflage Monk, and Derringer all did a great job at creating a soundscape that Gunn would sound great on. Fuck Stan Smith's has one of my favorite beats on here, and it leads right into the epic electric guitar sampled Bon Jovi. There's another phenomenal beat switch on here, keeping the electric guitar, but getting more soulful, while Benny raps his verse. Oil Bass has the most unique sound on here, almost sounding like a Griselda beat from a post-apocalyptic future. The features on his later projects consist largely of rappers who have been influenced by Griselda, but this project features so many artists who are part of the wave that made Griselda possible. You have Sean Price, Do-Rag Dynasty, Fast Air, and even Huss Kingpin. All of these artists make similar music to the wave that now runs hip-hop, so it's awesome to hear how their sounds meet on this record. Number 4, Hitler Wears Hermes 8, Sincerely Adolf. In theory, this is very similar to Side B, which came out just a month after this. But this one is so much more concise at just 13 songs and 40 minutes, and still has the high highs that the other one has. Just like with side B, this has 2 intros, but this time it leads directly into 2 amazing Stove God Cook songs. Stove is always great when he appears on Westside Gunn albums, but this project just might be my favorite addition to the Stove God canon. His verses are so sharp and bring so much energy to every track he's on. The song Draymond, which features him in Rome Streets, is one of the finest examples of MCing in the past few years, and right now has Stove singing one of my favorite hooks of the decade, leading into verses from him, Gunn, and Jadakiss. Rome kills the track Peri Peri, and it's awesome hearing Lil Wayne rock a Griselda beat on Bash Money. Mach-Hommy and Westside Gunn reunite on Margella Split Toes, and they channel up the magic of Pray for Haiti over this amazing trumpet sample. And Spoons with Conway is another Hall & Nash classic. Of all of Westside Gunn's albums, where he really overloads it with features, this one feels like the most properly curated. None of these tracks feel like they have a verse that doesn't fit. There's absolutely no skips on here to me. I think this may be the only Westside Gunn album with no true Westside Gunn solo songs, but it still works. He acts as an accent to each track, and his verses are the cherry on top of each properly curated creation. Number 3, Fly God. This was the first classic of Westside Gunn's career. Coming out in March of 2016, this project signaled a changing of the guard. Westside Gunn assembled the underground rap Avengers to help usher in the era of Griselda. The song Dunk starts the album off with a biblical vocal sample, leading right into one of my favorite Westside Gunn verses of all time, and that's piggybacked by a top-tier Conway verse after that. From top to bottom, this has some of the best rapping performances of the past 10 years. All these elite MCs bringing their A+ game, and Westside Gunn is holding his own right there with them. On Gustavo, Gunn spits over this beautifully calming beat, and his hook is essentially the credo that sums up his entire career, saying every day make money and pray. This album really feels like the crystallization of everything that Westside Gunn is all about. The song Shower Shoe Lords alone is this little hip-hop masterclass, starting with this beautiful soul sample, leading into this haunting piano loop with these awesome scratches over top of it. And Westside Gunn and Benny the Butcher are just rapping their hearts out. The album also features some underground legends that you may not always associate with being featured on Griselda projects. You have Danny Brown, Rock Marciano, Action Bronson, Your Old Droog, Mayhem Loren, Sky Zoo, and of course, mach-hommy. And each of them blend their styles with Griselda to make some all-time collaborations. And Westside Gunn's solo tracks on here are elite as well, specifically Mr. T, which is one of my favorite Westside Gunn tracks of all time, and has him spitting over this crackling, beautiful soul sample. This album just has this wholly special feeling to it. It has the same ingredients of most of his projects, but when they're put together, it makes for something truly magical. At number 2, we have Supreme Blientel. Where Fly God was Westside Gunn perfecting his style, Supreme Blientel is Gunn fully realizing everything that Griselda can be. This is a few years into Griselda's run, and it's probably the point where Griselda's trademark sound is at its best. Gods Don't Bleed has Westside Gunn, Benny the Butcher, and Jadakiss absolutely murdering one of the most iconic Derringer beats ever. This album feels like it's following the typical Griselda recipe, with soul samples, piano loops, and gritty lyrics, but everything about it is in its peak form. Conway and Benny join Gunn for Brutus, which has these sirens sounding off at the top of the track, and separates itself from the other tracks that Griselda 3 have made over the years. And Benny comes back for a third time on Brostface Brippler, which has one of my favorite Busta Rhymes verses of the past 10 years. Rock Marciano, Elzai, and Crime Apple all have great feature verses on here, but the best collaboration on this record has to go to Anderson .Paak, who assists Gunn on the magical WrestleMania 20. Pac delivers a beautiful hook, as expected, over a beat that sounds straight from the closing credits of Heaven's Gates, and Westside Gunn himself is amazing on this project. Of all these albums in the top tier of his discography, this is one of the ones with the most Westside Gunn rapping on it. Almost half the album is Gunn going solo, and he delivers every time. Amherst Station and Elizabeth are two of my favorite Gunn solo joints ever, and the track called Westside Gunn comes right in the middle of this incredible feature run and gives us a song that's just pure Westside Gunn to the fullest, in a way that only he could do it, and drops one of his best verses on the album. And at number 1, we have Pray for Paris. If you've been following my channel for a while, then this should be no surprise. One of my first videos I ever made was a deep dive into how amazing this project is to me. This album is the culmination of a decade of building for Westside Gunn. This is him at his most pristine, marinating in the music that he has mastered over the years. This whole thing feels like a piece of art, from the Virgil Abloh altered version of the famous Caravaggio that graces the cover, to the opening song that samples the most expensive art sale in history. The first word that Gunn says on this album is bonjour, putting the listener into this Parisian mind state, and transporting us across the world to the state of high art. The production on this record is glossy, while still having that classic Griselda feel. This is the Westside Gunn that we all know and love, just dipped in gold. No Vacancy is one of my favorite openers on any Gunn album. The song has this aura of opulence, and lets us know that Westside Gunn is on a mission for his rapping to match the level of iconic art that graced this album's cover. 327 is a clear standout here, with verses from Tyler the Creator and Joey Badass, showing that Griselda can transcend the eras of hip-hop. 500 Ounces is easily one of the coolest songs of the 2020s so far, with Freddie Gibbs and Rock Marciano each bringing their own style to the track. DJ Premier even lends a classic Gangstar-style beat to the song Sean vs. Flair. And that song has some of my favorite Westside Gunn delivery on his pretty hilarious hook. At just 12 songs and 36 minutes long, this album has no fat on it at all. Each verse and every beat is essential to this piece of art. In my opinion, this album is the perfect median between Westside Gunn the Curator and Westside Gunn the MC, making this the most pure form of Westside Gunn that we will probably ever see. Thank you for watching, everybody. This is, I believe, my longest video I ever made, so if you made it this far, shout out to you. Let me know your top 5 Westside Gunn albums down in the comments. Also, let me know, is there any other artists that you'd want to see me make a discography ranking of? If you enjoyed this video, make sure you leave a like and subscribe to the channel. As always, I want to give a special shout out to my patrons, and I got a lot more headed your way, so stay tuned, stay safe, and stay deaf. Thanks for watching.